But the biggest thing for me now is seeing other people rise up from the ashes that they were in and hearing their story. And I just feel like a mom to all these people. Like, I have a lot of team members under me or people that are on the product. And I just sit back and I smile how I have seen them blossom into the wonderful human beings that God always intended them to be. Like, there's nothing more fulfilling, actually.
Welcome to the Carla Rand Show, a weekly podcast designed to dig into the lives of everyday people. People who are making a positive impact, people who have risen above and overcome obstacles. Insights and stories from ordinary individuals who inspire us all towards the truly extraordinary. Here's your host.
Hey, it's Carla. I just got to talk to Tish Lethbridge, and Tish is such a genuine soul. She has such a heartfelt story from a struggling life where she was struggling as a young person going through a difficult time, and then into her adult life, 2 different marriages, and just like the struggle there with not feeling like she's enough, not feeling like she has anything to offer, but through her faith, through personal development, and through meeting some people that really impacted her, she was able to go from a difficult life to a real wonderful, beautiful place in her life where she's really thriving as a human being and impacting so many others. So I know you're going to love this story. Let's get into it. All right, let's do this. All right, well, I have Tish Lethbridge on this podcast with me today. Tish, I'm so glad you're here. So Tish is a mom of 7, a single mom of 7, and she's also an entrepreneur. She's built a company that she's been able to really grow and learn a lot, and she's just really kind of crushing it, to be honest. So Tish, welcome to the Carla Rand Show. We're really happy to have you here.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you for asking me. And thank you to Birdie Cooper for recommending that you reach out to me and ask me about my life, how it has transformed over these years.
Yeah, we had a conversation. It was quite a while ago, but I was just like, yeah, it was really, I loved hearing your story. And I thought, oh man, I just would love to have you on here. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I've been getting more and more of that. People, oh, you have to have this person, you have to have that person. So it's kind of neat. They're coming to me now. I don't have to do much work to find people, which is really cool. But Tish, let's get into your story. So how about you just start with giving us a little bit of context to who you are, where you grew up, a little bit about your childhood, just that kind of stuff, Tish.
Okay, well, I'm going to be 57 this year, and so I was born in Saskatchewan. I'm the fourth out of 5. I have 3 older brothers, 1 younger brother, and we lived on the bald prairies of Saskatchewan. We moved to Alberta when I was 6 years old, so I only had my grade 1 in Saskatchewan, and it was a huge... I think that really affected me, that move, because as a lot of people, and the more I'm in this entrepreneurial business and network marketing, I hear a lot of people's stories, and what literally blows me away all the time is how similar our stories really are. We're all connected, right? And so I grew up in quite a dysfunctional family. And so the only security that I really had at that time when I was younger were my grandmothers. And so we moved 4 hours away into Alberta from my grandmother's, and my life pretty much changed during that time. I was a small little girl, quiet and shy. I turned to food to mask my emotions, which at that time I had no idea. And again, like I said, it was still quite dysfunctional. I married right out of high school because I wanted to get away from the dysfunction. Little did I know that I was marrying more dysfunction.
I see.
So during that marriage, I had 2 children. I had 2 boys, not even a year apart. And that marriage was quite abusive. So I got out of that one. At times, mine and my kids' life were at danger with that man. And so I remember my mom saying when I met the next guy, she said, you're like jumping from the fish to the frying pan, because I met another guy who I thought was going to be my knight in shining armor and save me and my boys. Little did I know I was marrying it for the second time. But that marriage lasted 20 plus years and 5 more children, 5 more boys. So during that, my second husband was very narcissistic. And so he was very emotionally, verbally abusive to me and my children, because, well, the two oldest were his stepsons at that time, right? And yeah, so I didn't know what narcissism was about in those days. And so I tried to do better, be better, work harder, prove my worth, and it was never good enough. And it came down actually to 20 plus years later when the police had to be involved and I had to go through victim services. And I remember them telling me at the time, like, even when I went into the police that day, because he was starting to get physical, and I was scared. I'd never seen that side of him before, right? So even when it started getting physical, well, I had to go in, and I just wanted to go into the police station and just say, can you just please talk to him? Like, tell him what he's doing is wrong. Like, I did not expect that when I walked behind that closed door at the RCMP station, that already charges would be laid against him. And so right away, I felt bad, right? I thought it was all my fault, all my doing. And I remember having to deal with victim services and them saying that it takes an average woman 7 times to leave an unhealthy marriage, and most of them never do. Because they feel they're stuck. They're stuck financially. They have children. They have animals. They don't believe in themselves at the time that they can strike out and do it on their own. And so it was about 2 years going through that, like with victim services and stuff. And for me to wrap my head around that, it wasn't my fault. I wasn't imagining things. But we also went through a house fire, the boys and I. So when my marriage ended, I still had 5 of my 7 boys at home with me. And after the house fire, I rented a small rundown mobile home. My twins, who were 8 at that time, shared a bedroom with me for 2.5 years because we went from a larger, older house to a 2-bedroom house, right? And I had to go waitressing for the first time in my life. I was, I think, 45, 46, and I went waitressing. And anybody who's ever waitressed before knows that you don't make a living off your wage being a waitress. You pray to God every day for tips. And that's where I was at that time also, right? Because I was driving 30 miles one way to go to Rocky to work at Boston Pizza. And some days I would pray that I'd get enough tip money to have enough gas to get home and get back to work the next day. So that's how financially strapped. And there was no support coming in yet because we were still in the court system. My divorce took 6 years. Wow. And yeah, thankfully I was able to get a lawyer that when I just gave him like the down deposit, the retainer fee, I guess it is, that he was able to work with me and I didn't have to pay him till it was all said and done. But that was 6 years of really a lot of stress financially, emotionally, like, yeah, sometimes even my own kids, like they got jobs too. And they would help buy groceries.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So how old
was your? Changed.
So were your youngest 8 then, when all that kind of started going down? Okay. Yeah.
My youngest were 8. They had just turned 8, and my oldest was 16.
Okay. So what did you do after that, Tish? Because it does sound like you were in a pretty dark place. Just doing the best you can because you've got these boys that you're trying to look after. How did you kind of get out of that? Did it start to get better? And if so, when did that happen?
You know what? It did start to get better. It actually, just when my marriage had ended, I got introduced to network marketing. And for any of you who've ever been with network marketing before and good, solid companies, they highly, highly recommend personal self-development. Like, I didn't even know what personal self-development was until I was well into my 40s, right? And so I was just lapping it up like a puppy to a warm bowl of milk. I just like, oh my gosh, it felt like it breathed life into me again. So that's when my life started changing. I remember one of the top leaders in the company I was in at that time, like he was worth millions, literally millions, but he said he always, when he started from nothing, and still to this day, if he's seen a penny or a quarter on the ground, he would pick it up and say, I attract money wherever I go. And so I started doing that, thinking while I was doing it, I thought it was silly, but I was putting it out there. But I would also add on, and then I would give thanks to God, right? Like, I attract money wherever I go. Thank you, Jesus, for it is done. Mm-hmm. And I did that constantly, probably 2 or 3 years. And after a while, it just came a normal habit. I didn't even think about it when I did it. And I honestly believe that's what started my road to success, because law of attraction again. Yeah. So I was out on the farm, and then I moved to Sylvan, and I still had 3 of my 7 boys at home with me. I had 3 part-time jobs. Well, I had my network marketing career, which, I mean, it wasn't huge at that time, but I think it was roughly about $600 a month. So that is huge when you don't have any money coming in. Mm-hmm. I was working part-time as a receptionist at a used car dealership. And in the summertime, I was cleaning a couple cabins to bring in a little bit extra money just to help pay utilities and that kind of stuff, right? So that was pretty much the start of my journey to turn everything around, was when I got into network marketing and really dug deep into personal self-development. And this should have been first when I said it, I really got back into my faith. I remember days when things were really bad, and like the kids and I, before we'd go to bed, because like I said, the twins would share a bedroom with me, we would say the Lord's Prayer and we'd talk about the day. And I remember when they were sleeping, like I would actually lay in bed and cry because I didn't know what my life was going to look like. And all I remember is praying over and I'm getting teary-eyed here. All I remember is praying over and over again, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, the hope in the future. And it's like, that was just what I said constantly. And I think it was when I hit rock bottom again, like even with my 3 part-time jobs, like I was like, okay, God, I was laying on the couch one day and just like, what am I going to do? Like, what do you want me to do? I'd actually had left the used car dealership job because the dynamics had changed there and it just wasn't working anymore. It was coming on winter, so I didn't have the cabins to clean in the summertime. So I pretty much went from about $1,700 a month to back to $600 a month with my little network marketing check there. And I just said, okay, I handed it over to God, and I didn't know what that looked like, but he did. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think like what you mentioned, and this is what I notice about like network marketing, and a lot of people, like, they think of network marketing or MLM companies right away. Their back gets up and they're like, oh, I don't know. But I just feel like, man, does it, like a lot of the companies, probably not all of them, but a lot of them, they, like you said, it's self-development. And I think that's got to be kind of number one when you want to be successful in any life, is any part of your life, is like you have to be willing to invest in yourself, the time, potentially the money, whatever it takes. Like the best investment is the investment in yourself. And that could be your relationship with God too. And I mean, you can't buy your relationship with God. I don't mean that, but just like whatever resources that you need, whatever time you need to spend to develop that relationship with God and to develop yourself and all that looks like. I think that's so critical. And so I love that you said that, Tish, because I think a lot of people, they're struggling and they're going through life and they feel like, every time they take a step, it's like in the mud, they're in this sinking sand and they just feel like they can't get anywhere. And I often question, like, are you working on yourself? Are you working on that relationship with God? Are you developing, or are you still trying to do the same thing with the same headspace that you've always had? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, 100%. I remember going to one of my first conventions and seeing the men up there, and when they got up there to talk and how they talked, they put God first and then their wives first, and they were talking about, like, they were uplifting their wives. And I had never, ever seen men do that before where I grew up, how I grew up, right? Nobody valued them as a woman. And so that was a real eye-opener to me, that there were real men out there like that. And then also, I had been in network marketing for a good couple of years, and then again, another convention, and I was sitting in the front row, and people were walking across the stage, and the guy sitting beside me, he was one of my business partners, and I remember telling him, like, I don't ever want to go up on stage and be recognized. And he put his arm around my shoulders and he said, Tish, it's not about you. Other people need to hear your story. And I will never forget that. And then once I started sharing my story, my world changed.
Hmm. Wow. So what do you think are, like, you're talking about all of the, you had to overcome a lot of obstacles, Tish. Was there one
Yes.
Yeah. Was there one in particular that stood out to you that you were just like, it just maybe took you longer and you really needed to, I guess, like cling to your faith for that?
It would have definitely been my divorce. Like, even how bad my marriage was, I knew what to expect. But it was the fear of the unknown, leaving that marriage and not knowing how I was going to take care of my children or myself. That was the hardest, no doubt about it.
So how did God sort of, I guess, show up for you, or how did he help you through this? Because you talked about your faith. You talked about that was a key thing. Can you just explain that a little bit more, especially to people who are listening who maybe don't have that faith, or they don't maybe understand exactly what you're talking about. They haven't had that experience.
You know what? Because I was raised with a belief. I was raised Catholic, right? But I remember sitting in church with my mom, and we weren't devout Catholics. We just weren't, because we'd show up every now and then, right? But I remember sitting there and looking, and it's like I didn't feel it. Like, I believed in God, but I didn't feel it. And then when I was going through my divorce, my girlfriend introduced me to another non-denominational church, just a little church in a little hamlet. And the day I walked in there, I felt like I was walking into a home of love. Like, I have never felt like that. It was just like, I was literally blown away. And they all accepted me. Eventually I opened up and started sharing my story a little bit, just to the few that I started making friends with there. And I would show up and I would praise and I would pray, and like, financially I was still struggling big time. And I remember some of the ladies from the church, well, the very first time, it was October, and it was probably 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and it was the Thanksgiving weekend. I remember there a knock at the door, so I went to open the door, and here are some people from my church, and they brought us a hamper. And it wasn't just a hamper, it was probably like $300 worth of groceries, and oh my gosh. I remember thinking, I was so embarrassed, but at the same time so thankful for them to bring us this hamper, right? And so they did that a couple times through my first probably 2 or 3 years of a lot of struggle. And it's kind of funny. So when I started getting back on my feet, when we had moved into Sylvan Lake, and I went grocery shopping one day, and that's when at No Frills, they still had boxes you could put your groceries in, right? And so I had bought a lot of groceries, probably, again, $300+ worth of groceries, and I was putting them away. And when the boys come home from school, my oldest at that time, he was 15, 16, he goes, "Mom, are we poor again?" Because he's seen all those boxes of groceries, right? So I forget the question. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I just wanted you to share kind of like, yeah, how did your faith?
Oh, the faith.
Right? Like, how did that help you? And it sounds like you were, you came across a pretty amazing church where the people in that church were really living out their faith too, and showing you that love. I mean, that's impacted you, obviously. Was
100%.
Was there other parts to it? Like, how did God sort of show up for you through this time?
Okay, well, a perfect example is like when I said I wasn't working at that car dealership anymore and not cleaning cabins, and I just like, okay, God, laying on my couch one day, like, I'm not sure what you want me for, but I need something. And so I had applied for a nanny job, thinking that, well, I've raised 7 children of my own, and they're all pretty decent human beings, that I could help raise someone else's. And it was $2,500 a month, which, like, to me at that time was like winning a 649, right?
Yeah.
And so I had went for the first interview the evening and absolutely loved the kids. And the dad was home, but the mom was still at work. And he texted me after, and to go back a little bit, I didn't know how I was going to make the schedule work, because I still had to drive my kids to school, because the one thing I promised them when we moved into Sylvan was that they would be able to still attend their country school. And so it was like a 25-minute drive every morning, and then in the afternoon to go pick them up again, right? And I didn't know how I was going to work around that schedule if I got the job. And I just thought, well, I'll do it somehow. And so when I left that interview, because he asked if I could come back the next night to meet his wife, I said I couldn't come back then, but a couple of days later when I could come back. So we organized that. And so when I left, he texted me, he said, Tish, you pretty much have the job. So like I was on cloud 9, right? And so then that weekend I had went away with my boys because we had previous plans. And when I came back, the morning of my second interview, I was standing at my kitchen sink, just looking out the window. I wasn't even doing dishes. And my back went out like it's never went out in my entire life. Like if I wouldn't have been standing there to grab onto the cupboard or the counter, I would have fell to my knees. That's how bad the pain was. And I wasn't doing anything. So here I knew I had my next interview that night. So I'm taking Tylenol, Advil, just like so I could walk in there kind of normal. Well, I went in for my second interview and obviously they could tell I was in pain. So I don't know if they thought that I just always had a bad back or what was going on. But I woke up the next morning to not a text this time, but an email from them and said, Tish, we decided to go with our first choice. Mm. I was devastated. Like I thought I had that job in the bag, right? And so then I had started a new product from a different network marketing company, got on it. It is a health and wellness and weight loss. And I had lost, it's an 8-day plan detox where you can lose anywhere from 5 to 15 pounds in your first 8 days, all the while eating real food. So long story short, I got on it December 26th. I lost 11.5 pounds, 8 inches. 6 of those 8 inches were off my stomach area. And so what I did was just texted my stomach area picture to a couple of my closest girlfriends. Well, you know, us women, we're always talking, and a lot of times it's about our weight, right? Well, 6 of them got back to me instantly and said, okay, Tish, what are you doing? I'd like some more information. Well, I didn't know how to answer it, but the gentleman who got me started, he said, well, let's phone your friends up together. I'll help answer their questions. And so that's what we did, phone them up individually. And by me sharing my 8-day story, because that's literally all I had at the time, and then Freddie sharing his story and answering their questions, 5 of those 6 girlfriends signed up over a simple phone call. And I'll never forget when Freddie said, Tish, do you realize that not only did you just pay for your initial purchase, but you made money on top of it? I had no idea. I just wanted my girlfriends to feel as good as I was feeling, right? And then he was telling me more about the business opportunity, but I really wasn't open to it because I like network marketing, but I just felt like I was done with network marketing. But when he was telling me about what I could possibly make, and again, I didn't believe it. But then when all my 5 girlfriends signed up, I was like, well, maybe I can do this. And then he was telling me I could possibly make up to $25,000 in my first 90 days. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm 50 years old. I have a high school education, a farm life background. I had been single at that time already for 6 years. And like I said, I'm a single mom with 7 boys. 0 self-confidence, 0 self-esteem, and total strangers telling me I could possibly make that kind of money. I didn't make the $25,000, but in my first 90 days with this company, I made $27,100 US. I made more in the first 90 days of 2015 with doing that than I made the whole previous year of 2014 working 3 part-time jobs.
So you were like, yeah, that's cool. So how, like you would have had some limiting beliefs then. Like you said, you didn't feel like you would be able to do that, but that must have been a huge confidence builder for you, being like, I can do this.
Well, you know what? It actually was the belief I got from Freddie, because he believed in me at the time more than I believed in myself. Because I still seen myself in the victim mindset, and he seen me as a strong, worthy woman raising these boys on my own and doing whatever I had to do to raise them right. And so to go back about my belief about having God's hand in all of this, if my back wouldn't have went out that morning, I would have got that job. I would have still tried the products, but I would have never looked at the business opportunity. But my back went out. I tried the products, had good results, started sharing, and Freddie believed in me, locked arms with me, and my life has literally transformed in the last 6 years.
Wow, I've often heard that, Tish, that, you just need one person to believe in you. And Freddie did that for you. And I feel like, often I feel like that is my kind of calling too. It's just like, if I can show somebody that I do believe in them and I can point out their gifts and like, if that's all I can do, I feel like that is so powerful. Right? Like to do that as a mom with your kids, to do that with friends, to do that with, maybe strangers. Like Freddie was obviously not some buddy of yours, right? You just met him all of a sudden. But to have somebody believe in you is so powerful.
And you know what? And he has a strong belief in God too.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to our God. Our God's an awesome God.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me, when it comes to obstacles and stuff, then like once you started the business, and you grew that, and it sounds to me, Tish, like you have continually done very well in that business. You continue to do the self-improvement, the self-developing. So when you think of how you were before, like when you were, maybe married that second time, you were at home, things weren't going well, to how you feel now, what would be the biggest changes? Maybe it's your self-confidence. Maybe it's your relationship with God. Maybe it's your, whatever. What are those big changes, those big shifts that you had to make in your life in order to get to where you are today, do you think?
Again, yeah, 100% my self-confidence. Because if you would have asked me to jump on a call like this 6 years ago, I would have said no in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. I would not put myself out there publicly. Again, due to the network marketing company, I have been asked to speak on stage numerous times. And that was a huge step outside of my comfort zone. I remember the first time I was up there with my papers and I was shaking and my notes were flying all over the place. But it's like riding a bicycle. The more you do it, the easier it comes to you and you just don't forget, right? Mm-hmm. The last conference I was asked to speak at was in Dallas, Texas. And there was, I think, 1,100 people in the room, and it was about talking about our story. Well, everybody has a story to tell, and so I can tell my story. And one thing I recognize too, being on stage and sharing my story, how many people come up to me afterwards, 9 out of 10 times women, and saying, that's my story, because they're in an abusive relationship or they're out of an abusive relationship and have struggled. But in Dallas, when I shared my story, a guy came up to me afterwards and he said, that's my story. So that really blew me away too, because domestic violence is not just a woman thing, it's men and women, right? But sometimes men get the bad rap just because a lot more of it is from the men. But anyways, after there was a lady in the crowd at Dallas, and she was one of my team members, and she had beat the odds with her cancer treatment. Like she shouldn't have been there. And so I recognized her. And then my stage song was Rise Up by Audra Day. And I remember asking everybody to stand up in the crowd and hold hands. And as the song was playing, actually, I didn't ask them to hold their hands. I just asked them to stand up while the song was playing. And so while the song was playing, I watched them. They started all connecting their hands, and then they all lifted their hands up. And that was such a godly moment for me. Like you could feel the presence of God in there pouring love on this lady who had beat the odds of cancer. Like it was simply phenomenal. That's something I will never, ever forget.
I can just picture that right now. Almost feel like getting emotional, just like the power in that moment, right? And I think that's so neat. And I think it's so important that people share their story, and that's why I want to give people a platform like this to share their story, because a lot of people have incredible stories that can really impact others, but they never get to really share it. So I'm glad that you have had that opportunity to share it with others. How is it though? Raising your boys as a single mom. How did that go for you? Like that must have been hard to try to feel like, okay, I got to be there for my kids, but I've also got to work this job. How did you, were you able to find a balance there, or was it just trying to survive and grit your teeth and go for it? Or
I was in survival mode, 100%. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. I remember once, even my girlfriend and I, we wanted to do a weekend away at Kananaskis, like go on a bike trip. And neither one of us had any extra money to do it. And so we decided to go pick cans. Like, you do what you got to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even in the town, there's lots of cans or bottles thrown out of their vehicles and stuff. So I remember walking down one side of the road. She was on the other side of the road. And like, here I am, like I'm 48, 49, picking bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this truck of young teenage boys go by, and one yelled out the window, "Hey, get a real job." And I took it so personally, like, oh my gosh, like, it's just like, but I did what I had to do to take care of my boys. And that's all that mattered.
Mm. Oh, I could just picture that guy saying that, like how, I mean, isn't that a good lesson for us, Tish, to be like, we make judgments of people and we don't know the whole story so often. And I mean, yes, there's stereotypes but I mean, we have to step back and really, I think, look at the person as an individual and find out why, not just like, oh, it must be this, and make all these assumptions. That must have been kind of a devastating moment for you when you heard that.
It was. I held on to that for a long time, and it took me back to, I'm not good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I have to pick bottles to go away for a weekend type of thing. But again, personal self-development, I'm more than good enough. I'm a child of God, and I'm changing people's lives. And again, when you're talking about not judging people where they're at, if Freddie and Dr. Steve, he's a chiropractic doctor out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, if they would have judged me on who I was and how I was living at that time, I would not be where I'm at today. Because they could have just said, oh, well, she's a struggling mom of 7. She doesn't have money. Well, let's just sell her this products and just walk away. But they didn't.
That's so neat. That really inspires me. And I think it should inspire our listeners too. Like, yeah, is there somebody that you see that you can just give them some belief? Like, do you actually believe that they can get that? Because that's so true. And so much of it is mindset stuff. And I mean, and I'm getting more and more into that too, Tish, like for myself, but for others too. It's just like, how can we move forward? How can we get past all those limiting beliefs about money or about ourselves, our self-worth, all of that? How can we get on with life and stop letting these limiting beliefs hold us back so much and really like traumatize us in some ways, and just like almost like you're in a cage or something, and you just feel like you feel so stuck in this little cage and you can't get out. And a lot of that is just our beliefs. It has nothing to do with, like, it's just what we're thinking, and our thoughts are so powerful.
100%. So now, obviously, I've been financially blessed beyond belief. But the biggest thing for me now is seeing other people rise up from the ashes that they were in and hearing their story. And I just feel like a mom to all these people. Like, I have a lot of team members under me or people that are on the product, and I see them on Facebook or do calls with them now or Zoom calls. And I just sit back and I smile how I have seen them blossom into the wonderful human beings that God always intended them to be. Like, there's nothing more fulfilling, actually.
So true. Yeah. And I think too, like often when I feel small, like when I kind of play small, like a victim mentality, right? Like, oh, who am I? What can I do? But then I think, okay, Carla, maybe you can't do much on your own potentially, but you have a God who has all power. So really, if you're saying you don't have much power or you're just little, like, you're not seeing the big picture here, right? Like, it's like you have this veil over your eyes. And I feel like, yeah, with God's power at work with us and like walking step by step with him, you know, he's going to do whatever he wants to do with your life when you're open to it, right? Whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the power comes from.
100%. That's just like have you ever heard the starfish story?
I'm not sure. I might have. I can't remember, but
where I don't know if it was a little boy or a young man. It doesn't matter. Was walking along the beach, and like the tide had rolled in, and all the starfish were laying on the beach. Like, they need to be in the water. They're going to die, right? So he was walking along and picking them up and throwing them back into the ocean. And this guy comes along and says, like, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm putting them back in the ocean, or else they're going to die." He goes, "You can't save all of them." And he goes, "No, I can't save all of them, but I can save this one."
Yeah, that's right. That's such a good point. Yeah, thanks, Tish.
Yeah.
I love that story. Yeah, so Tish, if people want to get to know you more and find out, what you're doing, where would they go? And I know, I appreciate that you didn't go on and on about your product because this wasn't about your product, but this might be a time just to at least mention it, and then where they can go to find you if they want to hear more just from you as a person or learn more about the company that you are with.
Yeah, well, I'm on Facebook. I just have to quickly share another story with you.
Yeah.
I was out shopping at a new store, Rocky, at Christmas time, and I struck up a conversation. Oh, and that's another thing. Like, I can now strike up conversations with a total stranger, where before I would be the person sitting in the back room with my head down, not making eye contact, right? So that's, again, where personal self-development has really helped me along. But anyways, I started talking with a lady who owned the store, and I asked her if I could add her on Facebook, friend request her. And she goes, okay. She goes, what's your name? And all I did was say my first name. And she goes, oh, you're the red box, blue box lady. I was like, how do you know? She goes, I see you all over Facebook. So that was pretty phenomenal. In fact, one of my girlfriends and I, we were in Maui 2 years ago, and we got into the elevator in our condo, and this lady and her daughter come in the elevator too. And she looks at me and she goes, you're Tish Lethbridge. It's like I had no idea who she was. And she just knew me through her family, because her family was on our products too, right?
Wow.
So again, social media is huge if you use it in the proper way.
Right.
But it also can be very destructive, right? I do not follow any naysayers. I do not get into politics or religion. I just share from my heart. And again, I think that's why things have transformed for me too, because I'm a real heartfelt person. So people can find me on Facebook. My last name is Lethbridge, same as the city. So it's really easy to remember. My first name is Tish. And that's probably the easiest place. Okay. Because that's my main platform. And yeah, just reach out to me if you have any questions to ask. Our products are naturally food source-based supplements, and it's not just necessarily weight loss, it's health and wellness in general, because once you start getting healthy from the inside out, if you have weight to lose, you're going to lose weight. And if you don't, you're still going to be healthy, right? And right now, especially with the COVID going on, it's like there is no amount of wealth that can take care of your health if you don't have your health. So true. So true. Thank you so much, Tish, for sharing your story today on the Carla Rand Show. I just really appreciate it. I love just how you were able to just really share your heart and the struggles and some of the stuff that most people probably don't want to share, but you're willing to just go there. So really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much, Tish. You're welcome. And thank you so much for asking me, and keep doing what you're doing, because you are changing lives. You are saving that starfish. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. We are a tight-knit fitness community, and we guide you every step of the way to get fit and stay fit through our live workouts, nutrition coaching, and incredible support team. Go to powerfitnessedson.com to learn more. Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a positive review on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I would love to see your comments. I would love to know what you think about this episode and interact with you. I love hearing from you. Once again, I'm Carla Rand, and this is The Carla Rand Show, and I can't wait to see you next week for our next episode.